Wayne Doorband here for the Biweekly NTP CEED webinar huddle that we hold here at our Northern Colorado headquarters in Loveland, Colorado, both live here at our site and also going out over the web to those of you that are watching. Enjoy what we have for you today. Hi, Wayne Doorband here from Northern Colorado for the Economics in Action webinar. We come to you about every 2 weeks, every first and third Wednesday of the month, from wherever I am in the world or whoever our other host might be, and our amazing speakers that we get from all over the United States. As it turns out, we actually have someone with us today who's probably less than a mile away from me as we bring her in. But she is a world-renowned speaker and involved in her topic on a worldwide level. So we're excited to have Beth Conrey with us here today, and she's going to talk to us about her passion, which is bees, and about a whole bunch of other things. Beth and I have become friends, and we've actually recently met and talked about a number of topics, and so I think that we'll probably go in as we interview and talk about those things. I believe next week, do we have Cheryl Cran, or 2 weeks from now? It's 2 weeks in in the first week, the first Wednesday in April. We have Cheryl Cran. Cheryl was scheduled for a previous webinar for us, and she's going to be on then, and that's going to be exciting. And I'm going to recommend, please go back in and watch the replays of these. You can find them on our Nurse the Planet site. You can find them on replays that you might have had from the Webinar Jam platform that we use, and a variety of other things. And then secondly, please go in and put your questions that you have while Beth is speaking here into the chat area. And I always love to see who we've got in our chat area. I know we've got Mark out there. Mark's in Bangladesh, and Mark is a regular here for us. Mark is actually one of our staff and does some writing. And Mark, ask some questions today, buddy. And I see we've got Darren, and we've got several other folks. And so please, if you guys have got questions for Beth, throw them out there. We'll make sure we either address them when it's a good point during the interview here, or we'll catch them at the end. We try to stay pretty diligent to be about an hour, although if we go a little bit longer, I'm sure the audience won't mind. Usually it's because we're doing something really cool. Lastly, we will have a replay that will be available for this. We'll be editing it, and it'll come up tomorrow or the next day. And again, have fun. Ask questions. I think you're going to enjoy Beth. And so how are you doing, Beth? How's your day?
I'm doing well. It's going great. Thank you, Wayne.
Well, and I'm going to tell a little story. Beth is amazing for us today because somehow we'd had some communication, and she actually thought this was going to start an hour ago, and she was supposed to be on the road right now. And just before we started, I asked her a question about her schedule and whether she was on the road. Just repeat that again. Tell us what your schedule over the next several days.
Yes. Well, this is the price one pays for vacation last week. So okay. I will hang up with you and head to Pueblo. Then tomorrow I have a meeting at DIA. And then I have a training in Fort Collins, and then another meeting in Broomfield, and then Friday I'm in Denver in the morning and Boulder in the afternoon, and then Saturday and Sunday I will be teaching at the Laramie Bee College in Cheyenne, Laramie County.
And is it really called that, the Laramie Bee College, or are you just using that in your description?
No, it's called the Wyoming Bee College, but it's put on by the Laramie County Master Gardeners, so it's in Cheyenne, not Laramie.
Okay. We're going to do something here because Beth and I were having a little discussion about this earlier. We like to give out little tips every now and then on our webinars. Would anybody in the audience put into the chat that you see a difference in resolution quality between my webcam and Beth's? And I won't give you a hint of which one might be better or worse, but just put a little note in chat. Mark actually put in nice color, and Mark also said nice shirt, Wayne. Yeah, it's fancy, right? Just put in there which of the two images. Deb's going to go back and forth between them, right, Deb? And you're going to have and see which of the two images looks better. We had this as a discussion about Apple versus PC, because as I'm looking at Beth's on my screen, this image is better, and I speculated it was because of the webcam I use, which is not the webcam on my computer. And this is a little hint. We have a Logitech webcam that's a 1080p resolution that is portable. It's USB mounted. I think it's only about $100 in price, and it's amazing the quality difference between the one on mine and there. And I'm seeing if anybody's going to respond here on the chat, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, why don't you guys just respond, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Beth, I'm going to just ask you a few little personal questions. She was really reluctant to talk about the personal stuff, but we're going to do a little bit of that, and then we're going to let her move into bees. Just give us a little bit about your background, especially I think you put a little bit about your education here, a little bit personal life, and just whatever you want to say there, and we'll move from there.
Okay, so I was born in Illinois and moved all over the country and settled into Berthoud here 23 years ago when my older son was born. And I have been married for, I don't know, since 1981, however many years that is, to my husband, Mike. I have a Master of Business Administration from the University of New Mexico, which is where I met him at. And I worked in the food service business for many years, and then switched over to the bee business when the aforementioned older son hit middle school and needed to have a little bit of supervision.
And then tell us about your bee-related business and just about bee squared apothearies, or apiaries. What am I saying?
Apiaries. It's okay. Quite all right. B Squared Apiaries is a 60-hive, chemical-free beekeeping operation located here in Berthoud. We keep bees all the way east to I-25, all the way west to Parish Ranch, and all the way south down to the north end of Longmont. When we say we're chemical-free, that means that we do not use any harsh chemicals in the management of our hives. And then we, in addition to producing magnificent raw honey, also produce these beautiful beeswax candles and these wonderful soaps.
Yeah, and I think that we're showing some of those on the screen so people can see that. So when you say you have 60 hives, and you and I have talked bees a little, but I am by no means a bee expert. How are they distributed in that? So I'm going to tell folks a little bit more on that geography because I live right here. The distance between I-25 and Parish Ranch is 8 miles, maybe 10, in that range. And so there's obviously a spread there. So of those 60 hives, how are those distributed?
Most of them are in what we call 2-packs in people's backyards. Okay. And then we have several large yards, and they are located at my house, and then they are located at, the other one is at Wide Horizon Farms, which is a large orchard just behind the Walmart at 66 and 287.
So clearly a triangle there. So we're headed a little bit farther south as we get from Parish Ranch to the Walmart and then back towards the east. Okay.
Yeah, we have them on what we call routes. So one day we go east, Tuesday we go west, Wednesday we go south, Thursday we stay here, Friday we fix everything that needed to be done in the last 4 days that didn't get done.
And those are your routes, because the bees' routes, the bees go back and forth from a single hive. Is that correct, or are they moving around also? I'm assuming they're attached to a hive.
That is correct. They are attached to their mother.
To their mother,
and
right.
The queen bee has got a distinct pheromone that she emits, and they know which hive is theirs based upon that unique smell.
And Beth, I live in the canyon that enters, that hits the Little Thompson River about 1.5 miles west of Parish Ranch. And I've thought about putting hives in, and we're going to, but I've always worried that we just don't have enough flowering plants to probably support more than a hive or two. Let's say you expanded your operation towards where I'm at, and we had something there. Would that fit into your 60 and now becomes a 61 or 60, let's say 62 type hive system? Is that, or is how does I'm trying to understand that process just a little bit.
Right, and so we don't accept people who aren't on the routes. Okay, so in other words, if somebody makes a request for a hive, like right now I have a guy that really wants me to put hives east of the ranch in Larimer County, or I guess he's probably in Weld. I don't go there, and I can't maintain those insects there efficiently or effectively. So you represent more of a possibility since I'm already heading your way.
So you make those are business decisions for you.
Yes.
Based on, and then the viability of a set of hives would then be a judgment you'd make based on your observation of what the area pollination-wise looks like and whether it could support that pair of hives, I'm assuming.
Well, that's the theory, but we are always missing data, okay, because we have no idea who else is keeping bees in that area. So what we'll usually do is bet and keep an eye on them. And if there's adequate food, then they'll be happy and healthy, and if there's really adequate food, then I'll get some too.
Awesome. So let's go back now again on the personal side. When did you develop an interest in bees? Your background, master's in business administration. There's probably
Right.
something there where maybe even in your childhood, something that caused you to develop this life path.
Yes, so I was always a buggy when I was a kid, and I collected bugs in 4-H. And I had a 4-H project, and that project won the Maryland State Fair, I don't know, some 40-something years ago, as well as the New Mexico State Fair. And then I grew out of bugs, and then I grew back into them.
So did your family move from Maryland? Is that the distinction? They're kind of far apart, so you probably didn't just sort of win Maryland and say, oh, let's go to New Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Our daughters were involved in 4-H, and our youngest in particular, and actually we did move too, but she actually stopped her 4-H involvement when we moved from the Douglas County area up to Larimer County, but she would have participated in a different 4-H establishment. By the way, a message there, we've had several speakers talk about this, but 4-H is an amazing program. Highly recommend that if you have any potential of 4-H in your area that you should think about it. I haven't heard a story from anyone that I've interviewed or talked to yet that doesn't have a life experience that has passed forward in their life related that wasn't somehow related to their 4-H experience. So you gained that an interest there, but how about on the business side? When did you initiate the business side of your interest in bugs?
So I just find bees to be addictive. And so I started out innocently enough with 2 hives like anyone else does, and then just ended up kind of growing as my interest and funding allowed me to. And so it's fairly easy to manage less than 20 hives. And then there's a distinct break that occurs over that, and you have to get much, much, much more organized in your record keeping and in your management practices. And so once we made it through that hurdle, I think we've got a pretty good ability to go forward, probably up to a couple hundred hives before we have to make some strategic decisions and regroup again to manage that quantity.
And so that break, you went from 20, and then you also said 200. Is part of that maybe somewhere in that 20 to 200 could be managed by one person, and you move over 200, and now you've got another full-time or part-time help to do that? Or is there a personnel side of that equation?
Yes, and I think that's exactly where that break point occurs at.
Okay. And we'll talk about that more later. But so clearly someone in the bee industry, somebody in the whole area of bugs broadly, and maybe in bees specifically, has had some kind of an influence on you and your business life and your passion here. And everybody, you've got to know, this is a lady that is amazingly passionate about bees in general, and not just bees from the honey side, and we'll talk about that. I know she's got some things to say there, but what's a person that maybe has influenced you?
Well, most definitely it would be Tom Theobald from Niwot Honey Farms in Niwot. And Tom is a beautiful writer and writes newspaper columns still. He is in the Fence Post, which is a agricultural publication, as well as he used to be in the Berthoud and the Niwot Recorders when they existed. And that's where I started with the bee side of it, was he would just go on and on and on about his bees, and I would read that and go, golly, I got to do that.
That's awesome. And he's still engaged, and do you still seek guidance from him at times? Is he still
yes.
mentor?
Yes. We are in constant communication.
And I'm assuming you've paid it forward or paid it backward now, and that you probably have people that rely on you in the same sort of way.
Yes, I think my flock is fine. I have a small swarm.
What as it relates to the business side, and I know the passion that you have, and you've mentioned it several times now, which is chemical free, and you talked about Tom and his role, and some things you've given me in writing, and I'm going to butcher this word, but neon nicotinoids. You mentioned that Tom is adamant about the removal of neon nicotinoids, and I probably mispronounced that, so correct me on that. But
I will correct you on that. Yes. So the word is properly pronounced neonicotinoids.
That makes more
sense. And it's probably one that you recognize once it has been pronounced correctly, but I don't understand why anybody would get that right off the bat. So you are not being chastised in the least for your pronunciation of it. But neonicotinoids are a systemic insecticide, and they come in many different flavors, but an insecticide means that it kills insects, and a systemic means that it is taken up by the plant's vascular system and is present in the leaves and in the stem and in the flowers and in the pollen and in the nectar and in the fruits and vegetables and nuts, and everything that that plant is made up of contains minute amounts of that insecticide.
And you and I talked about systemic pesticides the other day. What are some other ones that one of our listeners might have known of, just of common names and of things that would be systemic, and then maybe some examples of some things that aren't, that are clearly pesticides. So they're a pesticide, but they're not a systemic pesticide.
I am not familiar with common names myself. I can tell you the scientific names of many of the neonicotinoids, the most popular being something called imidacloprid. It also breaks down into yet another neonicotinoid called clothianidin. There's a large bee kill incident up in Oregon from a neonicotinoid called dinotefuran, and there's lovely names like thiamethoxam and et cetera, but neonicotinoids are absolutely ubiquitous in our environment at this point in time. If you buy a flea and tick collar for your dog, it has got a neonicotinoid in it.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I'm assuming that they are ingredients in a number of different again, pesticides that we use for a variety of other purposes. So you just gave one example. Do you have any others that people could just relate to? So you talked about flea and tick collars. What other just common chemicals that people would be using that would be, a combination of a lot of things?
Right. Well, typically this time of year, everybody starts seeing everything at the garden center. So you are surrounded by racks of chemical options and racks of seeds. And if you see something that says will kill bugs, all bugs for the entire summer, that's a pretty good clue that you've got a systemic insecticide and that you have got one with something called a high residual value to it, which means that it's very persistent wherever you put it at, and it lasts a long time.
Makes sense. So let's stay on that topic because I know this is a huge passion. Tell us about the movement that you're really trying to get towns, cities, people in those locations around the country involved in, and then why. And I think maybe you would have to have not been awake to not know that we do have a major bee population reduction going on. And so let's just talk about that and then what this passion of something that we can all do without having hives and such.
Correct. Well, thank you for the opportunity. So we have, I have a talk that I deliver called Making the City Pretty. And that is, it's just a two-part message. One, reduce or eliminate your pesticide use. And two, plant flowers for bees and for other pollinating insects and other pollinators, period, okay, because birds and bats, etc., are pollinators also. And I think that within an urban environment, we have an outstanding number of opportunities to create literally a bee oasis where these insects can get enough groceries to survive as well as to thrive. And that message is one that I am trying to broadcast nationwide, worldwide for that matter, but just to let people know that they can do something. You know, you can plant flowers into your deck pots that are beneficial to insects, and you're going to plant flowers anyway. So why don't you kill two birds with one stone, so to speak?
And you even talked about even a specific strategy for me where one person might influence a certain number of other people, and through maybe holding a dinner with a speaker and so on. Talk a little bit about what.
Correct. Yes, so that actually is not my program, but that is some people in Boulder primarily, and it's called Be Safe Neighborhoods. And Be Safe Neighborhoods rely upon neighbors to talk to their neighbors and ask 75 contiguous homes to cease the utilization of systemic pesticides in their lawn care. And if they get 75 people to do that, then they get a Be Safe Neighborhood certification. But they also have started Be Safe Communities, where they are getting churches and libraries and schools and those types of properties to make the same commitment and establish Be Safe environments in those particular areas, non-residential areas.
And I know that you've even gone in our local area here and developing that system, and you'll come in and let's say do an evening meeting for a group and talk about all of what you're talking about now, probably more, and then the idea would be that contiguous group, maybe a leader would develop out of that, and then they could go and do the same sort of thing and encourage another group of 75 and so on. I mean, the concept seems amazing, so I just really hope it does catch on. It would be awesome.
There are 2 more Be Safe Neighborhoods that just made it this week.
All right.
And right now, Boulder City Council is contemplating a Be Safe resolution for the entire city.
And tell me what your role, or what anybody else's listening role, if they're in the area, could be to help that happen. Would it be talking to people, going to the meetings, or what?
Yep, all of those things. The more citizen action we have, the more gets done. The Be Safe resolution is a non-binding resolution. It's actually against a state statute to further restrict pesticide use at a local level, and so they cannot make it a statute of their own at the present time in Colorado, so they are just passing a non-binding resolution to that effect.
By the way, a little bit of an aside, we do have in our little poll we did earlier, that it looks like people are saying, my image does look better, but yours is fine. So there must. I think that Apple argument might be winning out here.
There you go. Well, mine came with a machine.
So anyway, again, you and I have talked about this. So how many in Colorado, even how many different varieties, species, whatever the right description would be, of bees do we have?
So in Colorado, we have 1,111 documented species of bees. We are estimated to have 950 roughly resident bees. And out of all of those bees, there's only one that produces honey, and that is the honeybee. The rest of them are something called solitary bees, where they live a solitary life. Either in holes in the ground or holes in wood or some other form or fashion, but they are incapable of producing honey because they do not have a colony that supports them.
And would they sort of be pairs, or is there still a queen? Is there still some of the dynamic of the classes with those solitary bees? I'm assuming not.
No.
They would, okay.
Nope, they are not a social insect. In fact, you could go so far to say as they are an antisocial insect. But nonetheless, they are responsible for an inordinate amount of pollination. Many of them are very specific pollinators for very specific plants, so that the plants co-evolved with the insect and vice versa.
So tell us about this bee crisis that's going on, if it is that, and maybe I'm overstating it, and what some of your thoughts about it are, and if we can't abate it, what are the potential, at least, negative outcomes as we move ahead?
Right. So there is widely regarded to be a pollinator crisis in general, and a bee crisis in particular. A bee crisis is not a. Everybody wants the problem with bees to be a rifle, okay? But the problem is it's a shotgun. So it's not just one thing that's causing issues with bees. It's a whole host of things causing issues with bees. So some of those are parasites, some of those are disease, some of those are lack of adequate nutrition, some of those are pesticides. Some of those I can control because I am managing the hives. Some of those everyone can impact because they can plant flowers and they can stop using pesticides.
You talked about just now that there are individual species of bees that literally pollinate one or a small number of species. One of the common misconceptions that people have, and you and I have talked about this also, is what are not bees. So some people think about some animals that are not bees, and I don't know whether you sent this one to Deb, so I'm hoping if you did, she'll find it. You actually, I think, told me that when you're doing presentations, you show a picture of some of these insects that are not bees, and they're mischaracterized as such.
Yes, okay, so many people confuse a western yellow jacket with a honeybee. They do not look physically the same, but western yellow jackets sting and that is what generally leads people to believe they have been stung by a bee. But a western yellow jacket is actually a type of wasp.
And you and I talked about allergies at one point too, about bees, and would a person tend to be more potentially allergic to a yellow jacket, and the yellow jacket is on the bottom and the honeybee is on the top. So the size scale is probably about right there. Those are, on my screen at least, both of them are bigger than they would be, but it's going to depend on the size of your screen. But what about the sting? Are there allergic reactions that might be different between the two types?
Yes. As with any sting, there's going to be differences because the venoms differ. The biggest difference is that yellow jackets have the capability of stinging many times, and honeybees can only sting once and then they die. Okay. So if somebody gets stung multiple times, they know that they've been stung by a yellow jacket. And statistically speaking, an allergic reaction occurs in approximately 2% of the adult population. A lot of people have a reaction, but not an allergic reaction. Okay. So back on the concept of the bee crisis as such that we're having, pollination crisis is the better way that you stated it, and the bee-safe neighborhoods. What are some other things that we should all be thinking about that we could do better in terms of making this a bee-safe world? And then maybe what should people think about in terms of beekeeping if they'd like to get involved in it themselves, have a hive or multiples or so on? Okay, so I would say that people need to support sustainable agriculture, and sustainable agriculture probably takes the form of organic, and it takes the form of local also. And in order to have the greatest effect, you have to shop with your wallet. And so patronize businesses that support that mentality for sure. When we talk about, boy, I'm going to derail my train. You don't have to wait for a train. I'm going to deliver you one. Any rate, with respect to keeping bees, I have kind of fallen back on something that people would consider odd as a beekeeper, and saying that I really don't want people to eat bees right now. I want people to fix the problem. We can't keep injecting more bees into this bad environment. We've got to fix that environment. And so if we can fix that environment by reducing our pesticide use and increasing the nutrition available for these insects in our landscapes, whether they're agricultural, urban, or suburban, then we will be able to support more bees of all types, not just managed hives.
And can I, as a homeowner, let's just say I'm a normal urban lot homeowner, and I really am passionate about this, and so I want to do what all I can do, and I'm talking to my neighbors, I'm eliminating the use of systemics myself, I'm trying to get my neighbors to do the same. Can I go out into my lawn and make some physical observations and see if there's fruits of my own activities? Can you see a difference in more of these solitary species or even other insects? Does that make any sense? And go ahead.
Yes.
So again, I'm thinking about becoming a beekeeper. What should I do? And just repeat that because we had lost the volume a little.
Yeah, no problem. So what you would want to do is educate yourself, and the best way to educate yourself is to take a class. So classes are offered from a variety of sources, typically beekeeping associations.
And one of the things you said earlier is and it's beyond bees, and I didn't ask you this question, but you did actually give me a definition. you use the word sustainable, and that's a word that I think everybody has different definitions to, and you and I even talked about before about even using that word, but if and you mentioned that people could be sustainable by buying locally, and in the case of honey, let's talk about that. How do we know that if I'm buying honey that I'm getting some honey that's not necessarily been contaminated with something? Is there anything I can use? And obviously locally that's pretty easy. I can ask people where they're from when I buy it at a farmer's market or even at a store. I guess I don't know it when I go to a supermarket, but are there any honeys that I could buy at a supermarket that would confirm the sustainability that we're talking about?
Boy, that's a good question. There is not, at this time, a federal standard of identity for honey. Meaning that just because it says honey on the label does not mean that that is necessarily what is in the jar. They are very close to the adoption of a federal standard of identity for honey, and when that comes about, at least when you buy something in the store that says it's honey, it will have to be honey. Currently, there is what's called country of origin labeling, and so you are able to determine if your honey is from the United States or from elsewhere around the world. There is also at the present time a ban on Chinese honey into the country due to contamination issues.
Beyond that, though, if I really want to know that it's local, I'd probably either better know who I'm buying it from or it better say it on the label. And you're telling me I may not even be able to know the validity of that label. But so it probably means the safest way to me to do it is to make sure I'm buying from somebody that I know is local and I know what their philosophy is and how they're raising their bees and such.
Correct.
So that leads to the question of it's a two parts, but one, how do you sell your honey as a professional beekeeper, and then how do others do it if it's means other than the ways you do?
I think that I'm probably fairly standard issue in the manner in which we sell honey. Most of what we sell comes out of here as retail jars. So we sell honey in various sizes of jars that people can buy from here or can buy on the internet. We also have several retail outlets that purchase our product and resell it in the local area. So our product, if you're not buying it on the internet, then you can only buy it locally.
So here's a question that we had from our audience. Is there a difference between honey from wild bees and honey from farms, so farm raised, hive, commercial hive raised?
Well, as a chemical, in other words, as the product itself, there is no difference between wild bee honey and managed hives, okay, as a product. Now, honeys are like wines in that they vary dramatically in taste and flavor profiles. And so honey produced here in Colorado, for example, we produce two honeys. We produce an early season clover honey, which is lighter, more cinnamony overtone to it. And then we produce a later season alfalfa honey, which is a darker honey, much more of a butterscotch, full-bodied honey than the clover is. But the national honey of France, for example, is lavender honey, which is made from the nectar of lavender flowers, and so it tastes like lavender. And in Greece, it's thyme honey, and so the Greek honey tastes like thyme, and every area around the country has their own distinctive flavor profiles for their honeys, based upon the nectar sources in the area.
And that makes total sense. So this is kind of a crazy question. And if you don't have the answer, don't feel bad. But I like to ask crazy ones. Is there the most valuable honey in the world? You know, you talked about similar to wines. Obviously, there are wines that have a lot more value than others. Someone who knows the industry, is there one that you can just think of, or in your mind, that's, you know, it's 10 times the value of, let's say, another honey from a location? And if there is, why is it so much more valuable?
There are certainly honeys that have more value for indistinct reasons, okay? So, for example, Tupelo honey is generally regarded as more valuable, but that's because there's a song about it. So it is also a honey that does not crystallize, and so that is of value to certain segments of people. And so Tupelo honey is one that comes to mind as one that is able to charge a higher price for that particular product.
And where would that come from?
Tupelo honey comes from the south, down into the Louisiana, Georgia area, from the Tupelo plant.
I'm going to put one of my guests that's here in the room with me on the spot. Are you a honey eater at all, Jeff?
Yes, in the breakfast, always.
And do you pay attention to its name, and what if it? She's talking about different names of honeys.
It's not like intention, but yes, I feel the difference in the taste.
Okay.
When we got the honey from our northern side of our country, it's different as compared to the other cities. So that's how it is.
Okay. So Jeff's from Pakistan, and he was just telling us, I don't know if you could hear it, he was a little bit away from the mic, but how when he has honey for his breakfast, how he can know when it's coming from the northern part of the country versus in other areas around the city. So, so along those lines, in terms of honey itself, tell us a little bit about why honey is such an amazing food for us, and what are its nutritional values.
So honey is the only food without a shelf life, and it is the only food that is produced by insects for human consumption. Man has had a relationship with the honeybee based upon the flavor of honey for absolutely eons. And if you think of an early man and an early man's diet, and then you imagine that early man coming across a beehive and tasting honey, you can imagine also how different it was from everything else that he had ever had, and which was meat and roots and vegetables and fruits that don't remotely resemble our vegetables and fruits that we have now. And you know, he went, holy cow, what on earth is this? This is the food of the gods. And indeed it is. And so honey has had a very long and storied history with man, and it's because of its properties as being something that was way sweeter than anything else that was in our diet when we first began.
There's another question that's come in here about the pureness of honey, and again, along the lines of you saying, and it was shocking me to hear that there is no way that I, as a consumer, can know if I buy something at the store that it even really is honey, that it could have been something that fabricated. So this question is, can you tell by taste or any other way whether a honey is pure or whether it's been somehow changed?
there is a whole testing program that exists to try and determine whether honey is being transshipped from China via other countries into the U.S. And that testing program is testing for the presence of pollens in those honeys, and those pollens then determine the plant that the bees were collecting the nectar from. To get around that, people are engaged in something called ultra purification, which takes honey and filters it so that the pollen is entirely removed, so that country of origin cannot be detected.
So, wow, that's discouraging, because you're telling me that it is possible to essentially fake what you're producing and fake the origin, and it must be because there's enough value that people that are going to cheat are going to figure out ways to cheat, right? And that's kind of what we're hearing.
Correct. I mean, typically what happens is there is some percentage of honey. It may not be entirely honey. But sometimes you'll look on a package that says honey, and if you read it, it will say does not contain honey.
Okay. So if nothing else, people should read just to make sure. Well,
yes.
I'm going to open it to you, Beth, and let you tell us sort of anything you'd like to. We've got about 10 minutes left here, and then I have a couple more questions that I want to finish with. So why don't I kind of turn it over to you. Any topic that you might want to choose is open. We haven't talked about candles, and Deb was showing a slide for quite a while there about your beeswax candles. Certainly, please tell us how they can buy from you, and I think we've had your webpage up and so on, and anything else, just whatever topic you might want here.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Well, I'll answer the first one first. So with respect to the candles, beeswax candles are the original reason that bees were brought to this country was for beeswax. They were not brought here for pollination. They were brought here for beeswax. And they were brought here for beeswax for religious ceremonies. So a bee makes an infinitesimal amount of wax in its lifetime. About if you have a decent fingernail on your finger, about the white part of your fingernail is what a bee produces in wax in its lifetime. And it creates that wax and forms it with its mandibles to make the beeswax pattern that we are all familiar with. And it is a very precious commodity. So if a hive produces, let's say, 100 pounds of honey, it will produce approximately 1 pound of beeswax. And so beeswax is expensive. There's no other way that it can be made except by a bee, just like honey. There's no way to make honey. A bee has to make honey. And the beeswax, as a result, is a beautiful, beautiful product. It burns very clean. It generates negative ions that pull pollutants, little microscopic, the dust motes that you see out of the air. It has a long burning flame, beautiful color to it. It's the only non-carcinogenic candle out there, actually. And so beeswax is highly valued, and the candles are a valuable product. We make a beautiful candle. We make several different types of them. We decorate them with dried flowers that we try and source as locally as we can, and we sell a lot of them. And then as far as then we also make a beautiful soap, and our soaps don't have any chemically synthesized scents to them, so they are great for anybody with any skin sensitivity whatsoever. Honey, and this is something that people don't have kind of lost sight of in our modern medical world, but honey is a ancient wound treatment. So when you were on a battlefield and you got, stabbed with a sword, you went charging off, or somebody went charging off looking for a beehive to pack that wound with honey. And honey is an antibacterial, an antifungal, an antiviral, and is incredibly valuable for its therapeutic benefits for skin and wound care.
Well, those are awesome facts that I'm sure a lot of us didn't know. I certainly didn't know some of those things. Any other topic that you'd like to cover? Again, Deb's been showing your website here with pictures of those things as you're talking about them. I would encourage anyone and everyone listening to go to Beth's site and order some products from her. Sounds like they're amazing. I'm certainly gonna do it. I've learned a lot. We've covered a lot of things here. Do you have anything else real quick, or I'm just going to end up with a couple of otother questions for you?
There you go. Well, I think the last thing I would like to end with is to let people know that the honeybee is the most well-studied beneficial insect on the planet, and it is an incredibly beneficial insect. And if people can sort of restore the respect that they used to have generations ago for the bug, it would go a long way. And people are afraid of bees anymore, and it's just sad because bees are really not to be feared by and large.
Well, that's a great message. And I'm one of those people that I did have some kind of an allergic reaction. My mother actually told me got me terribly scared of bees when I was young, because supposedly I had some kind of an allergic reaction when I was, before I could remember, 8, 9 months old or something. Yet I've been stung more recently, and I don't think I have that reaction any longer. So certainly I think there is a misconception there. Here's my last couple of questions, because these are ones that I had prepped you for a little bit, and you gave some great answers. And the first one is, what's a key skill that you've learned in the recent past that's influencing how you're working in business today?
Okay, so my response was time management. And time management as a parent, as a wife, as a business owner, as president of 2 large nonprofit beekeeping associations, as a board member of 2 other large nonprofit pollinator associations, I need to manage it and manage it well. And so time management is of crucial importance to me in running my businesses and my life.
Do you use any tools to help you with that? Anything that our listeners might? Or is it just a thought process? It's a priority for you?
Yes, I certainly use calendars, but no, that's the only tool I use. I used to get away without one of those, too. Age caught up with me.
So this will be the last question. And anyone in the audience, if you've got others that you might want to ask, go ahead and throw them up here now on the screen. And you gave us a really cool quote. So we always ask folks, is there a quote or a phrase from anyone famous that you can remember that is just something that's memorable to you? And I've found that everybody's got one, and we've had audience that really enjoy it. So you gave us one here, and do you remember what that is? And if you could give it to us, to the audience.
Certainly. The quote that I gave you was, "Good enough seldom is." And the quote is attributed to a woman by the name of Debbie Fields, who is more widely known as Mrs. Fields Cookies.
Right. That's what I thought. And that's a really great quote. So, good enough seldom is. Well, that's all I've got, and I'm not seeing any other questions come up. This has been amazing. We're right at an hour here. I know this is going to be a lot of great information for our listeners, and please make sure to tell your friends about this. Listen to it on a replay, which is available. It'll be on our website. It'll be on our Facebook pages that we put up. You just never can get enough good learning and information. So, Beth, we thank you so much for being here. Drive safe in all those travels you're going to be doing here in the next few days. especially today going to Pueblo. The weather's going to be nice, I think, so that won't be an issue. But again, thank you so much. You and I will stay involved at that local level like we've talked about. We'll see if we can get Berthoud to truly be the Garden City as it's called. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne. And you too, Deb. I appreciate you, both of you.
All right, everybody. Again, signing off live from Northern Colorado. This is Wayne Dorband in Economics in Action. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks with Cheryl Cran as our next guest.